This is modifying cheap car parts. Now, why did I have to bring this topic to you guys? Well, because we're going to be doing some installs on some parts that are really cheap from, one of our favorite online parts buying places. I'll say their name later on. But as always, guys, I start off with the announcements. Thank you guys for all the support. The channel continues to grow and continues to make steam, and that's because of you guys. I appreciate all the support you guys do. Please hit the subscribe button, the like button, and ring that notification bell so you guys get notified when I go live every Sunday at 1 p.m. Central Time. This is when I start my podcasts, and through the podcast, we do quite a bit of different stuff. We do installs, we do kind of talking about the news. I even do a Q&A portion throughout that live, or today's live, that you guys can chat in down below, and I'll read your chats on screen. Again, I'm trying to develop the community here, so this is kind of what we're working towards. Let me go ahead and get my chat set up for you guys so I can see you. Every time it starts with top chats, meaning that I won't get everything, where I have to switch it every time we go live, guys. So what we're going to do is I'm going to get set up here, and for the most part, I'm ready. I'm just letting you guys kind of filter in right now. So again, if you guys got any questions today throughout the podcast, either on one of your own projects, about the topic, or something about the news, go ahead and chat in down below. My mods usually come in pretty soon here, and they'll come in and give a hand, and they'll also kind of help answer your questions if they can. Our main goal here is to start at the bench today, because the bench is kind of where we're going to modify most of our used parts. And the reason for this is some of these used or even new online parts oftentimes don't have the best fitment. And when we're trying to put them in a vehicle, they need to fit perfectly. We don't want to have to go back and fix it, or we don't want the part falling off the car. We don't want to lose stuff. It's important to know what we're doing when we're modifying these parts and understand how they work. Now, some are just a cheap, bad design, which is what we're about to see. Other ones can be modified and be made better. Now, there was a couple of different ways I could have went about modifying this part, but I chose to take the more safe route, and maybe that shouldn't have been that way, but that's what I did. Just checking a few things here. It's good to have you guys here on this Sunday. Again, like I always say, every Sunday at 1 p.m. is when we go live. So, and if my mods come in, please chat in. Let me know that my mods are in. So let's go ahead and get started. The main thing here is modifying cheap parts. What are we looking at when we're modifying these? Well, let's start off with which part are we modifying? Well, pretty simple, an exhaust tip. Exhaust tips are pretty self-explanatory. For the most part, they're cosmetic. The only time that they're really functional, truly functional, is when they're trying to get the heat away from the car, meaning that the heat doesn't go up into the plastic bumper. And that's what I'm going to be trying to do here on Malibu Steel. I will have something bad happen to Malibu Steel, and I will be talking about that later in the video. I haven't dropped any news on it, guys. It happened yesterday. So you guys are going to get fresh live content here a little bit later in this video after we get done doing the install on this. But let's go ahead and talk about what we had to do to modify this, to get this to go onto the car. And some of this is because it was just cheaply made. It was thrown together, tossed in a box, and mailed out. Meaning that you could look for a little bit higher quality, but I chose to kind of go with a middle of the road one that I could possibly work with, just to show you guys that the stuff does exist. And even at the kind of the mid-grade price, these aren't really all the best setups. So we're going to look at what those are, and we're going to talk about them and go over them before we go ahead and do the install. Again, if you guys got any questions, chat them in down below. I always read my chats on screen. I do a Q&A portion later on in the video. So let's go ahead and talk about this little piece right here. What is this? This is the piece that actually holds the tip onto the pipe. The way it holds it onto the pipe is the bolt will press these inside, grabbing the pipe. What was the flaw that I needed to modify or change with this particular piece? Well, this used to be round, and as it's being rounded, it's not going to bite into the tip. It's not going to bite into that metal pipe holding the tip on. So the best way to fix that is to take an angle grinder and grind that V angle into it and sharpen that little tip. Now I'm not going to touch the top of these because these are extremely sharp. So I've sharpened all of my tips. All 4 of these are really sharp. This will help that to bite into the exhaust pipe, holding the tip in place. And the reason for this process was so important because I don't want to lose the tip. Obviously, I want it to stay on the car. And in order to do that, I needed to modify this. Now, I could have just said, well, here, this is how we grind these tips and be done with it. Truth is, there was more to it than that. The bolts that came in this. Originally, these bolts were a lot shorter because they weren't designed to extend out all the way to allow me to slide this onto my pipe. So I had to do some modification. That modification was me putting in a longer bolt. Now I know everyone's going to say these are pretty simple mods, you know, where is the complex in it? Most modifications really are not complex. The truth is a lot of it is just what you need to do to make it functional or make it work better. That's what a modification is. Anytime you do anything that improves or adds to adherence, you're doing a modification. It doesn't matter how simple it is. And we can look at a modification later on the Silver Swine when it comes to LEDs. I do have a video I've been waiting to drop, but with what happened to Malibu Steel yesterday, you guys are going to see later in the video. I got a lot of work coming up for this car, and I was hoping it wasn't going to happen, but it did. And when it did, there was nothing I could do about it. So here we go. We have this ready. Now all we're going to need is our wrench to tighten this up. But when I bought these longer bolts, what did I add? I added 2 metal washers and I used the lock washer that came in the kit. The reason for this is so that when I crank this down onto the pipe, it's going to compress the lock washers to hold these on. Those lock washers have to be compressed. Well, in order to compress them for how much the tip has to get squeezed, I needed to add the washers. I needed to take up some of that gap. Otherwise, there would have been too much of a gap. The bolt would have tried to spear into the pipe, and I wouldn't have been able to bottom out that lock washer holding it in place. Because if I can't keep it from vibrating off, it's not going to work. So the first thing we'll need for the install, and guys, this install is pretty basic, so that's why I've got other stuff to talk about here later in this video. And I also got, like I said, we could always go over to the Silver Swine. I've had a couple of videos waiting in the wings on that one, and I haven't been able to get around to it because we've had brake issues with Malibu Steel. We've had some performance stuff I needed to do. We need to get a bunch of minor things done that affected fuel mileage. And like I told you guys, this one is for fuel mileage. That's what it's here for. It's not here as a sports car. It's not here for the thrill of having a 4-door car. I mean, it's here as something that we're playing around with and trying to get better fuel mileage. And most of you are going to be in that situation. Most of you aren't going to be in a situation where you bought a Camaro, Mustang, Challenger, something like that, and you're trying to push it over 1,000 horsepower. Those are fun, don't get me wrong. I would love to have one of those and be able to play with it and show you guys a bunch of cool stuff, but it's not what you guys are driving every day. And that's really why I do my channel, is to show you guys everyday things that we can do. Whether it be, you know, changing an alternator, water pump. We've got a whole bunch of stuff coming up on Malibu Steel here real soon. So let's go ahead and slide this on, and then we're going to go ahead and get this onto the pipe, and we should be good to go. So when it comes to exhaust tips, location and position matter a lot. If you're going to do a tip, the point of these are to get the heat away from the bumper. So as the heat comes up, it heats up this bumper and panel. This can cause cracking and damage later on. We want to fix this. We don't want to heat soak these panels because they are cheap plastic. This tip helps us to get the heat away from the car. So if we shove this all the way in and then tighten it down, what happens is we don't get that heat away from the bumper. The stock position of this tip, the heat goes right up into this part of the bumper and it'll actually start to discolor this part of the bumper. This is like a bumper bezel or a bumper spoiler. This will start to discolor or even possibly melt. In order to fix that, we're going to slide the tip on and tighten it up. Now, we don't want it sticking way out because it looks bad and you can catch your leg on it when you walk by the car. It just looks trashy and annoying. So I try to slide it back to where it'll work the best, and then that's where I'll probably tighten it down. Again, I want to keep it far enough away that the heat will come up and go away from the bumper, not heat soak into it. Okay, so I'm noticing an issue. We're going to go ahead and talk about this real quick. So this tip obviously has some issues, and we knew about this going into it. We knew that we would have to do some different modifications to get this to actually fit on there properly. And one of them is that our angle pieces that we grinded here, these are still loose even though they're starting to tighten up on the pipe, because these are actually, the bolts are going into the pipe. That's starting to become the problem. All right, Bill, I'm putting you in timeout. Nick, hit the two-step on that bad boy. Are you kidding me? It's a Malibu. There ain't no two-step. we ain't we ain't playing around with nitrous on this pig. So, yeah, what we're gonna do is take this back loose. I'm gonna pull this off. Again, what the issue is that these bolts are now going in and hitting on the pipe and not allowing us to bite into this part that actually holds it on. So how we have to fix that is add another set of washers on top of this yet, just to get that done. Okay. Straight pipe or just bust. Or, yeah, or bust just grab the Sawzall. Younger bro is actually a YouTube mechanic. Okay, guys. Yeah, some of you guys might not know my history. Thank you guys for tuning in on this Sunday. But yeah, I've been turning wrenches since I was 13. I'm not no young buck anymore. I wish I was. I wish I had some of the toys I had back then. They were a lot more fun, I'll tell you that. But no, I did this to kind of give back. The reason I do a lot of my stuff is to help other people do stuff. Again, it's one of these things where I had two people who really helped me get into this and really learn how to do automotive. So I really wanted to share what I had and be able to help other people. That's the only reason I do what I do. A lot of times it's hard to try to line up decent stuff to do for you guys. Other times it's like I'd rather plan to do some other things, but I work around those to make sure I'm here for you guys at the time that I'm here. So again, I appreciate you guys coming in. Make sure you guys hit the subscribe button, hit the like button, ring the notification bell. I do go live every Sunday. So what we're going to do to fix our little mess up here is we're going to add some more washers. And once we add the more washers, we shouldn't be having the bolts driving into the pipe. We don't want the bolts to bottom out on the pipe. We want our little triangle pieces to bottom out onto the pipe, because these triangle or these pieces here will actually hold the pipe better than the bolt itself. If we just run the bolt in and left it, it would vibrate loose, because once the bolt loosens up, the tip would just wiggle off and eventually fall off. That lock washer is the only thing that holds this tip on. That's why this is such an important piece, and why we need to make sure this gets tight. When I just slid this on and tried to tighten this up, and I had slack in the washers and in these clips, I knew it wasn't going to stay on. So let me grab my bolt kit and we're going to add some washers. All right. So cheap bolt kit that you can buy from any auto parts store. It's kind of the best way to do this. It's always good to keep a few on hand. You never know when you're going to need bolts for anything. Now, some of these are more the standard bolts. I don't have a whole lot of metrics, and unfortunately, these cars have a lot of metric bolts on them. At some point, I will probably invest in a bolt bin for my garage here, but that is not a high priority. So I'm going to start by adding 2 more washers to each side and see if that works. If it's too much, we'll take it back off and we'll remove some washers, but I want to try to avoid taking this apart constantly. So we're going to try to do this. Daniel says hi. The summer receipt says hi, Pilgrim. Hi guys, thank you for joining in on this Sunday. It's good to see everyone here. Again, if my mods come in, make sure you guys say hi, because I like to know when my mods are here, kind of watching things. And I do mod people up if they help with the content and they're helping in chat, and they again, we try to have a very respectful Discord here. You know, I got no problems arguing with people about topics. I have no problems talking about tough subjects. I do a little bit of the tougher talk stuff later on when I do news towards the tail end. I do that because of censorship issues. So, but I got no problems doing that kind of stuff. What I don't like is people being disrespectful in chat. So we tried it with 4. 4 is too many. So we're going to go ahead, take these back apart. This is why you got to call it a modification, because you're going to put it on, take it off, put it on, take it off, put it on, take it off, until it finally fits right. That's what real modification looks like. What you guys see on TV shows when they're doing these big car builds and they're trying to do it in a certain amount of time and they're rushing against the clock to get it done. You guys don't see the multiple times they take it apart, put it back together, take it apart, put it back together. That's what you don't see. That's TV, not real life. Real life looks like this, you know, where you putz on it a little bit, see if you can make it work. You try it a little bit, you try it again, try it a different way. If it doesn't work, Ultimately, you decide whether or not it's going to work, and then you decide if you're going to throw it away. We could be throwing this tip away if I can't get this to tighten up on the pipe. Okay, so where I have this positioned right now, let's take a look at this real quick, guys. So where I have this positioned right now, if I left it where it is now, it's still going to heat soak this bumper because it's really not out far enough. So I need to wiggle it out just a hair, usually about an inch or so. You want this to actually, if you were to look down from the top of the car, you want to look down and start seeing part of the tip. Usually your outer ridge, you want to see it by looking down. If you can't, what's going to happen, that heat is just going to keep radiating up. So you'll have something that looks flashy, but it's not functional. Exhaust tips are designed to be functional by their nature. They're designed to keep heat off of panels. That's what they're there for. They're not there for performance. They're not there for anything but redirecting heat and sound. All right, so this is actually tightening up really nice. I'm happy to see that this is actually biting into the pipe. It's actually locking in, and it's to where I don't think this tip is going to fall off. Now, I'm not going to get super carried away and tighten this up a lot. There's a couple of reasons for that. Allow me to get into some of those right now. The reason I'm not going to over tighten this tip is because this is made in a very cheap process, meaning that the steel is not very strong, the clips are not very strong, bolts are all modified. So if I get carried away, I could probably run the bolts too tight, strip everything out, and wreck everything. If I can't wiggle the tip, move it in and out, if it's nice and tight, it's okay to leave it like that as long as it doesn't have any wiggle or play. You want it to feel tight on there. Just make sure that the bolts that you're using don't bottom out into the pipe, because if they bottom out into the pipe, then that's what's holding it tight, and not those clips that we modified that we had to shave and put the sharp angles on it. The reason we did those sharp angles is so that they bite into that pipe, keeping that from moving around. As long as those are working properly, we're good to go. So that's really the install on the exhaust tip. Again, guys, I'm going to probably play around with it a little bit more. I do have another video coming up on a different site, so I will be taking it back off for that video. I will then go ahead and put it back on and finish it the way I want to finish it. So, but that's pretty much the process, is just making sure you don't over tighten. I'm going to go through some of the chats here, and then I'm going to show you guys the mishap that happened to this car yesterday. So we got Kevin, drill through the exhaust and bolt from the bottom so you don't see the bolt head. I could do that. I see that you said good. Never mind. Yeah, you could do it that way. I have seen people do it in that technique where they just go and they run a bolt through it. I've seen them drill straight through all the way and then run a bolt and pinch the pipe. I don't want to do that. I'm trying to use the hardware that came in the kit. The reason for that is I want to see if their design or their technique is working properly. If it isn't, I can report it back to you guys and say, don't buy this from Amazon. Yes, it's late enough in the video now, guys. I can go ahead and drop a few things. That's right, this cheap tip came from Amazon. So, yeah, even though we buy online car parts, it doesn't mean that we're getting quality stuff. Sometimes we have to modify it to fit our cars. And it's okay if you're buying universal parts. We already saw a universal wing that went on this thing that was made of rubber. You guys saw that I ripped that off, and I have a factory one coming for it that's designed for this car. It was one that the factory used, and it's one that I'm going to use on this car. And the reason I'm doing that is so that the wind, when it comes off the back of the car, doesn't come down, wrap underneath the car, and have a pulling back effect. That's what happens when you don't have any spoiler at all. Now, if you have a huge spoiler, you create a tremendous amount of downforce on the back of the car, and that also messes up your fuel mileage. You want a slight, gentle push of the air off the back of the car, because what that does is it doesn't wrap the air underneath the car and pull it backwards. You can gain a little bit better fuel mileage with this. This Malibu, I'm averaging 31 right now, and we haven't done anything crazy to try to increase fuel mileage yet. It's all been pretty basic setups. So that's really what I'm trying to do here, guys, with this. Check out a few more chats. Daniel, I like this channel. Good. Yeah, I'm trying to do content that brings you guys just basic everyday stuff. Things you guys are going to run into, whether it be brakes, tune-ups, oil changes, sensor replacements, scanning of engine codes. So I do try to show all that stuff. I don't bog you guys down in the scan detail stuff. So I've noticed that a lot of automotive channels will try to bog you down in the scan tool stuff. When you guys see me use a scan tool, it's to tell you what the code is. And then I'm going to show you what the code is, and I'm going to work on replacing what caused that code. It's not going to be, well, let's go ahead and look in here and let's run this test and do all these things inside the computer where we don't physically show you guys how to turn off the light. The whole point of doing it is to turn off the light, is to fix that issue. So that's what I focus on here. We do a few customizing stuff. You guys already know this isn't factory on this car. That would be gold in color. I don't like that on this car. It doesn't fit this car. It doesn't really flow with this car's design very well. So that's right, we did a badge blackout on this car. Now I still got to do them on the rims, but we've already done it on the steering wheel. So let's take a look here. Daniel again. I've been interested in the mechanics. Yes. Yeah, mechanic industry right now, those guys they're kind of in a hurting spot. I'm not going to lie. Mechanics have a very tough time. That's why I'm not working in a shop. Again, my experience has gone from, I'll just run it down for you guys, for the new people that are in here. I started out turning wrenches when I was 13. I learned from my dad, who was a mechanic. I also learned from a friend of mine who was an auto body tech. So I kind of have a wide spectrum of stuff that I was experienced in going into my early 20s. I opened my own business when I was 25 years old. I then sold that business, and through that I was piggybacking on my trucking experience because I had gotten my Class A. I owned my own trucks. I worked on my own trucks. I did all of that stuff on my own with the help of a family member and a few close friends. Those were the ones who kind of got the whole trucking in the business and kept everything up and going right. Through that, we decided to migrate, sell the business. I went more into the trucking on my own, and I drove for a lot of other different people. I currently work for a really large company. I'm not going to say their name, but they do take very good care of me, and I do drive a long ways to go to work every day. That's why you guys see this. It was about, I want to say almost 6 years ago when I came onto YouTube, I decided it was time for me to give back. It was time for me to share my knowledge. The wife and I don't have kids, so it was time for me to give back. It was time for me to share my experiences and pass it on, hopefully down to the next generation. It all starts with doing the basics. I'll tell you right now, the gateway drug for automotive is oil changes. You start doing your own oil changes and you do them right and do them good. Eventually, it leads to you doing other things. You'll do spark plugs, you'll do coil packs, you'll do alternators, you'll do serpentine belts. That's kind of the gateway. Once you get into doing some more motor stuff, it opens up a lot more. Brakes, that's another gateway. Brakes are a good thing to learn. Now, brakes have started to get pretty complex, and it's only going to get worse as the years go on here. We're going to have to really be careful on what we're doing with brakes in the future. There's a lot of stuff coming up where you need some very, very, very expensive scan tools to play around in the brake industry. Again, I will probably be upgrading my scanner here, hopefully early next year. And you guys, I'll probably be looking to a few different options as far as what I want. I'm going to avoid Snap-on. I know my mechanics in the audience right now are going to run me through the mill. Why don't you buy the best? You pay for the name when it comes to Snap-on. Yes, they make good stuff. Yes, they have good warranties, but a lot of people have warranties. Harbor Freight has warranties. Harbor Freight also has some very cheap tools also. So anyone looking to get in and can't afford a huge starter set, I still haven't done a starter set video for tools, guys. I probably should. If you do want to see that, drop it down below. Let me know that you guys are interested in that, and I will try to get around making a startup tool video. We're also going to have in the near future here, we're going to have a video on tools you should take with you on a road trip. If you're going to road trip anywhere, there is a certain set of tools you should have to make your life a whole lot easier, because you never know if you're going to need those tools. You could run across something on the road, wind up getting a flat tire. You can have a light out and you need to get it fixed. Having certain tools with you helps you do that process. Now, some of the newer cars are just a straight up pain if you ever have to change a headlight bulb on the road, because you have to pull part of the front bumper apart to do it. Oftentimes, I would just try to push through and get to where I need to go, then take the time to fix it. Other times, if I have to, it's nice to have those tools along. So next, let's go ahead and talk about what happened to Malibu steel. Why do I call it Malibu steel, guys? I call it Malibu steel because the paint is a mocha steel, is what they call it. So that's how I got the name Malibu steel. Obviously, I do all my own errands and all my own running around. And I was on a back road somewhere that, let's just say it was a long stretch of road, and I was just relaxing and driving, got a little too close to the white line, and a mailbox decided to meet my mirror. And when it did meet the mirror, and it met it in a big way. Destroyed the mirror, wrecked the molding, and damaged the body. We're going to take a look at the damage here in just a little bit, and I'll explain to you guys how we may not be able to permanently make this go away, but we're going to lessen the damage that was done on this car severely. So we're going to be able to reverse a little bit of time on this car, but there's going to be some dent stuff that I'm not going to be able to get rid of. Now, I might play around with getting a PDR guide, because I do have some other dents that I want to fix on some other vehicles. So if I can find somebody that's in my area that's good with PDR, I'd like to do some videos with him if he's up for that or she's up for that. I would like to get somebody in that's very comfortable with that. I've played around with a little bit of PDR stuff. I don't have the tools. So because I don't have the tools, I'm not going to sit there and try to remove dents with wrenches. Yes, we all can do it, but we shouldn't do it. Those PDR tools are specially bent and specially designed tools, and we don't have to bend and modify our wrenches to do that. So again, that's all part of that process. So hopefully I can find somebody that would be good at that. Let's go ahead and take a look at this damage now on this car. And when it happened, I was very frustrated and ticked off that it happened. But I also have to learn to look at things in a different way, guys. I have to look at it as, now this is a chance for me to bring you guys some really good content. So I have to take the good with the bad. You guys are obviously noticing right here that I'm missing a mirror. Again, when I was going down that road, the mailbox was actually sticking out past the white line. So just so you guys know, I wasn't goofing around or doing something stupid. I wasn't speeding or doing anything crazy. The mailbox was actually sticking out past the white line. I was too close to the white line. That mailbox clipped, and when it did, the wire stayed attached. I wound up having to cut the wire on the side of the road, and it struck here on the molding, struck here on the molding, here on the body, and here on the body. What you guys aren't seeing, because I don't got you guys in close yet, I'm going to bring you guys in close here in just a little bit, is the pieces of glass actually scratched this window and scratched the paint here. We are going to do some paint touch-ups on this, and there will be plenty of videos on that paint touch-up. But we're going to reverse this damage because I've already bought in the mirror. When it happened yesterday, I went straight online, looked for a used mirror that was painted the same color as the car for 50 bucks. I was able to get that mirror and replace it. The most expensive part on this car for this repair is going to be this molding. This molding was 250 bucks. I can't get away from that. I need to get this molding if I want to reverse this damage. In order to reverse that damage, the whole molding has to be replaced. As you guys can see, it massively damaged this molding. So there is no pushing this back out. It is also scratched and very messed up. Now it is stainless steel. It could possibly be pushed out and buffed, but it'll weaken the stainless, and it's just better to replace the molding at this time. The door, on the other hand, is a whole nother issue. It's harder to erase damages on panels without doing some sanding and buffing or getting a PDR guy to fix these dents. So these dents are always going to be here. There's nothing I can do. The camera is having a hard time picking up. There you guys go. You can start seeing some of the scratches here from the glass. Those scratches we're going to touch up. So those are not going to remain. We are going to remove those scratches. And we'll probably start with a buffing process is what we're going to do. So we'll start with a buffing process. Move you guys back over here. We'll start with a buffing process and we'll work our way back. And when I mean work our way back, you usually start with a coarse compound. So very coarse, very aggressive compound. And you'll buff the entire paint job, get it all cleaned up. Now this one has an extreme amount of overspray on it, so I might go ahead and just buff out the whole car. I don't like doing that. It's an extremely messy job. It's time consuming, but on a deal like this, it might actually be worth it and might be rewarding. We might actually see some benefit by doing it. We can maybe smoothen out the paint a little bit so it doesn't feel like sandpaper when I rub my hand on it. That's because the previous owner oversprayed the entire panel. So if you guys got any questions, chat them in. I read them on screen. Some other modifications I want to bring up when you guys buy online parts. LEDs are a big one. A lot of times LED stuff isn't always plug and play. Some vehicles have electrical issues. Yep, that one right there. So I will explain after I read this chat. From Keen Bob Lee Lorenzo. I am working on my own car, a 97 Civic, which is older than me. What modifications can you suggest? Okay, let's talk a little bit about those. I'll come back to this one over here with the electrical stuff on LEDs, but all right, so you want to get into doing some modification stuff. Number one, it's always good to do your basic maintenance stuff and get your car tuned up and running right before you start doing modifications. So number one, I would go through, do an oil change, do plugs, do wires, do a full tune up on the car. Make sure your alternator is in good shape, your serpentine belts are in good shape. And the reason I say alternator and serpentine belts is most people, I'm going to guess your age at this point. I don't know for sure, but I'm going to guess that you're probably a younger guy and you're interested, or I don't know about the name, but I'm just saying you're a younger person and you might want to put a stereo system in it. And if you're going to go the stereo system route, you need to have a strong alternator because you're going to stress that alternator with any kind of sound system you do. So I've done a lot of sound systems and I've done a lot of alternators because the alternators need to be at their top. SoCal, good to see you, man, here on the Sunday. Thanks for checking in. I always give my mods a shout out when I see them in. Tattooed, I'll get to you in just a second. Modifications that you might want to do, you might want to look into doing a PCV valve delete, meaning that it will not recirculate your oil back into your engine through your upper intake. That is one thing that most people don't do. It can help increase fuel mileage and it can keep debris out of the upper part of your intake. Again, if you live in a state with emissions, you will not pass emissions if you do that though, so you need to use an oil catch can instead. As far as other modifications, when you're doing your plugs and wires, upgrade your plugs. Do an E3 spark plug. That'll help give fuel mileage and a little bit of performance. If you're looking to go crazy with the Civic, again, I don't know what your intentions are. If you're looking to go crazy with it, you can get a turbo kit for it. Make sure you get the right injectors. You might even have to do a full engine rebuild. If you're going to go that route, though, I would suggest buying a junkyard engine that has a good engine out of another car. Strip it down, take it to a machine shop, have them machine all the parts, get everything perfect. Get your pistons balanced perfect, your crank, everything. Put everything back together with new parts. Make sure it's solid. That way, when you put those turbo kits on there, you get the maximum performance you possibly can out of the car. I see people throw turbo kits on motors that are already tired and they blow up the motors. And it's a waste of time and money. Tattooed, let me get to your question quick. I'm proud of you. You are capable of amazing things. Keep pushing forward. It takes a lot to make the best of things. You are doing awesome. Stay strong. Thank you, Tattooed. Yeah. Basically, my goal here is just to give back. I'm here to share my knowledge, and when things happen, try to show you guys. Now, I wasn't going to hide that damage on that car. I wasn't. My whole goal here was when things happen, and things happen to me, things happen to you guys, people can get into small fender benders and dent their front fenders. I can show you guys the tricks to not having to do paint work. All you got to do is find some used parts that are in good shape, swap them out. That's what we did with this mirror. So the one on the passenger side is a used mirror. Same power mirror, same everything. I'm just going to swap it out and put a new mirror in it. No big deal. Yep, SoCal, I seen you. Thank you. Remember turbo add-ons and the pressure on your motor. Yep, that's just what I was saying to him. Make sure he watches out for that turbo pressure. You can wreck a lot of stuff if you're going to start adding turbos. Only daily use. My engine now is the D16A rebuilt engine. Just want to increase a little bit of performance. Okay, so if you're just looking to increase a little bit of performance, work on your intake setup. Try to remove air restrictions. Put better air boxes on it. Don't do the cheap Amazon air box, cold air intake, warm air intake. If you do those setups, remember to try to buy the ones with the shields so that it keeps the heat out of the engine. That will actually increase performance. The other thing you can do is maybe play around with a different style throttle body. So a good throttle body goes a long, long ways, guys. A lot of the factory stock throttle bodies are very small. They're very restrictive. And they also don't have the same kind of actuation to them when you're running the gas. GMs are notorious for using stepper motors inside their throttle bodies. What this does is means when you go to hit that gas, it opens in stages. It doesn't just flow open. So if you were to mash the pedal down, it'll just open in stages rather than just popping open. GM is horrible for this. That's why companies like Pedal Commander became so popular. With the recent news in Pedal Commander, I would stay away from them guys. A lot of times they wind up destroying the throttle bodies because when they rewire the electrical portion of it, they're actually frying the throttle body electrical portions of it. So again, stay away from Pedal Commander, but that's something you can do on a 97. It's possible you might have a throttle cable. That's another way to get some more performance out of that car. If you have the cable, adjust your cable. Make sure your cable, when you press that pedal all the way to the floor, that valve is opening all the way. Make sure it's flat. As cables age, what happens is they start to stretch, so they won't fully open. This one had a cable. This one only has 40,000 miles on it, so the cable wasn't stretched. But that was a Toyota versus a Honda. Again, check, see if you have a throttle cable. You might be able to gain some performance there by just adjusting that cable and getting it to where that throttle body opens flat. You want that blade to be as flat as possible. That'll give you the best performance. 1UP M, I'm going to guess 1UP Mario. Cool. I have a 69 Ford Charger SS. Kim, is stock air intake better than an aftermarket? Okay, let's go ahead and press on this topic a little bit here. The stock intakes are extremely restrictive. They put baffles in them on purpose. They use that to restrict performance. They use it to choke back power. The reason they do this is to meet emissions. They can meet emissions by pulling back on the horsepower, meaning that the motors have more potential to them than what they have when they first come out of the factory. In order to unlock that performance, you need to do two things. Increase your airflow in and remove restrictions of airflow out. You do those two things, you can gain performance and you can gain a lot better fuel mileage even by having that higher horsepower or that restrictions removed. Those restrictions are extremely annoying. I've removed them on a lot of different vehicles. Every vehicle is different on how you remove those restrictions. So on an exhaust setup, your restriction, you're going to have catalytic converters, you might have a resonator, and you're going to have a muffler. So why is a muffler a restriction? Because stock mufflers have fiberglass packing in them. Those fiberglass packing restrict airflow. They stop the air from going out. They're also stopping the sound, but they also stop the airflow going out. So putting a baffled muffler in it will remove that restriction. The air can then flow freely. Yes, it has to follow the path inside the muffler, but it removes that back pressure and allows the motor to breathe better. Would I ever remove catalytic converters? On a street car? Absolutely not. Never remove your cats on a street car. The reason why is because the way they've designed the computers and the tuning of it, you remove the catalytic converters, you can actually do more damage to the engine than if you just leave the cats in. I will remove resonators. I've removed the resonator off of this car. And when I removed the resonator, I gained almost 1.5 miles to the gallon by removing the resonator. I will check my throttle body tomorrow if it has any stretch or not. Thank you. Yeah, if it has any stretch in that throttle cable, what you can do is do an adjustment on it. Old school adjustments. All right, I don't know if I like showing you guys this trick, but I will. That's what we're here for. So the old school trick on your throttle bodies. If you got slack in them, what you can do is go inside the interior, pull the cable away from the throttle pedal, use a zip tie, put the zip tie behind the little nub on the cable, pull that zip tie tight, snip it off, and you removed the slack out of your throttle pedal. Again, you don't want to get too carried away and put too many zip ties in it because you can actually cause it to bind to the gas pedal. So don't get super carried away, but you could put one zip tie on there and take some of that slack out. SoCal, remember, depending on your state, aftermarket intakes will make you fail emissions. SoCal, that's why you're one of my mods. Yes, guys, certain cold air intakes, depending on your state, are not legal. California, you really can't do a whole lot of anything to your car but drive it and put gas in it. I would never move to California. As a car person, I would never move there. Arizona is almost as bad. My job might give me the option of going into Arizona in the future. I don't know the time frame of that, but yeah, I'm not looking forward to anything emission related. So emission states, you're restricted severely. Oh, thank you. I will keep that in mind. I am here in the Philippines. You can do what you want, just don't get caught. Oh, that's kind of the way it is here in the US too. It is, we kind of try to do what we want. We look for places where we can still enjoy working on our own cars and modifying our own stuff, but there are some places that are extremely restrictive and make you put a sticker on your car and they make you jump through a bunch of hoops, and it's not a lot of fun in some places. It's a hassle. That being said, I do enjoy doing what I do in my own garage. I'm able to do it in the state that I live in and not have too much backlash, so it's good. But yeah, in the Philippines, you could probably get away with some more stuff than what I could probably get away with even here in the US, but I would tell you never get rid of your catalytic converters. The reason why is the computers are just hardwired for it, and unless you have a scan, like an actual tuner, and those are very spendy, but if you have an actual tuner where you can retune the car after you take the cats out, that's the only way you can do it. For the most part, in order for people to gain power and performance, the best thing you can do is actually take a few other steps. Again, remove that restriction there. Make sure your throttle body is clean. Make sure the cable works properly if it's cable driven. Make sure you do a tune-up on it, good plugs and wires. Make sure the plugs are gapped properly. I would suggest E3s if you want fuel and performance. I really do. I put them on here, and honestly, I would put them on everything. Eventually, if I ever do plugs on this one over here again, I will be doing an E3 plug on that. Just, it's going to make it run so much better. SoCal K&N, for example, is a guarantee to fail you on vehicle inspections here in yeah. I can tell by your name where you're from. I know. And you know what I'm saying more than anyone else because you live there. So you clearly know the issues for car guys in a state like that. That's why a lot of times lowrider communities became popular in California. A lot of the car painting and customization stuff became very popular in California. It's just because they hate power and performance. They really do. They always have. You're better off having a nice painted up hippie van than you are driving a sports car. You really are. That's the California culture. I've never cared for it. I would rather have a car with 1,000 horsepower than have one painted up to look like the Scooby-Doo van. Don't get me wrong, there's nothing wrong with Scooby-Doo van, but not my thing. Let's see here. I'm still adjusting in cars because this is my first project car. I'm only a motorcycle mechanic. Okay, so I got a few pointers I'll give you. Let me read Jake's and I'll get back to you. Jake, you remind me of how nice it is to live somewhere where emissions ain't required. Yeah. We hope it stays that way. We hope. But yeah. So back to you being a motorcycle mechanic. So the motorcycle mechanic, you already have the knowledge of turning wrenches. You already know kind of how to take things apart and put things back together. So that's a good knowledge to have. Cars just require bigger tools. So a lot bigger wrench sets. If you get into doing wheel bearings and brakes, your wrenches are a lot bigger. The other thing is torque specs. Make sure you use online sources to find torque specs when you're putting stuff back together. Cars are very increment on their torque specs. You have to follow what those are. The reason I say that is a lot of people get into automotive and they don't realize torque specs. They don't buy good torque wrenches. And because they don't buy the good stuff, what happens is they wind up losing wheels down the road because they didn't torque their wheel on it. So these are important things to know. Now, some things don't require any torque specs, such as doing a taillight lens or something like that. You don't have to worry about that. So that's always a good thing. Okay, so your name got you got your message held. Let me see if I can okay, sorry about that. Sometimes how I have mine set up is kind of aggressive here. I'm trying to see if I can activate your chat. Okay, so I can't activate your chat. I think it's because of your channel name. This one was from Triple S or Double S Shadow. Your opinion on the 2024 Mitsubishi Mirage GT. Let's go ahead and get into some of the newer car stuff. Guys, right now, newer cars I'm not a fan of. The computer programming is a nightmare. Working on them is an absolute disaster. They're so heavy in needing the dealership for everything that I just don't like dealing with them. Mitsubishi makes a good car, but all the manufacturers are going to be bad or going to be good at bad. So Cal, you're right. That's exactly it. So when it comes to newer stuff, if you're looking at buying something that's going to have a warranty and you don't turn a lot of wrenches or work on something, go for it. If that's your brand and what you like, then I'm not here to tell you no. But at the same time, I would also say foreign cars do carry a higher cost at repairs at a dealership or even at a parts, anytime that somebody's doing repairs. What happens is those repair costs add up over time, which is why a lot of people don't buy foreign. Toyota is pretty high priced when you have to take something into a dealer. It's crazy how much Toyotas cost. The only reason I have mine is because I got mine from a family member from Arizona. And because it's low miles, I am choosing to take care of it. If I didn't have the knowledge to turn wrenches on it, I probably would have just sold it at the time because it was worth a pretty decent amount of money at the time. I probably would have just sold it and bought something American because it would have been easier to work on. HKS intake or Satoma intake. What you think? I'm not too familiar with the one. HKS, I do know makes some good stuff. So true. I work for a manufacturer and see strange stuff. Yeah. If you're working on a manufacturing plant, you'll notice the automotive industry has really taken a massive hit. It's no longer about power and performance anymore. It isn't. I almost hate to say it that way, but it is. So Cal, one of my mods, Maintenance and availability of mechanics is a huge thing. Consider what you are looking at. New age cars can actually take it to Joe's Auto and have work done. Probably not. I will agree with you, SoCal. The newer cars have gotten so advanced and so tricky to work on that you can't just take them everywhere. You have to take them back to the dealer. The warranties help, but too many people are, I've seen this on some of my chats already this week, guys. People are sitting here saying, well, that's why I got a warranty. That's great. What happens when that warranty runs out? Well, then I'll just trade it in for something new. So you like blowing money in interest, paying extra money to banks that don't care about you, and throwing that money right out the window, because that's exactly what you're doing. If you got the disposable income and you don't care, then good for you. But most people are not in that position. Most people are not able to afford taking a hit like that and paying ridiculous interest rates right now. They're not. And they have to choose what they're going to do. They have to choose, do I put food on the table or do I make my $1,000 a month car payment? And honestly, a warranty and $1,000 a month car payment ain't worth it. Yep. So yeah, let's go ahead and scratch the topic now that we've been playing around with here. Oh, got one from SoCal. Jeeps, for example, transmission is dealer only service. The dealer is going to have your car for a few days rather than a few hours. Yes, I do agree with you on that. Jeep is horrible. I'll bring a little bit more of that. I would, or what do you think? I missed your chat before. What are you talking about? You would need a radiator. Oh, for the intake setup. If you have to change the radiator and redo the whole front core support to put in an intake setup, don't do that. Buy bolt-in kits that work the best. Like I said, K&N, we mentioned K&N makes a good setup. I know HKS makes a good setup as well. That's just a direct bolt-in intake setup that will remove any restrictions upstream. Again, if you want to get the best out of the car, you have to remove restrictions upstream and downstream. So you have to pull out the restrictions in the intake, such as your stock airbox restrictions, any baffles that are in those. Make sure your pipes are clean and smooth and not corrugated. Those corrugations cause turbulence. Turbulence you don't want because it slows down the airflow going into the engine. Again, in your exhaust, you want to remove resonators. You want to put in a free-flowing muffler. Those are ways to gain performance without having to break the bank. Again, I definitely wouldn't step up to a turbo setup on a used car, though. Definitely not. Usually, if I'm going to go turbo, I'm going to build a motor for it because I want to get the most out of it. So, Cal, if you go with something like a K&N, spend the extra few dollars to get the outer wear for the filter. Correct. Buy the outer screen that goes around the filter. Also spend the higher dollar for the air intake box. Don't go cheap. Buy the better box. You can buy the cheap K&N, which is just a filter and a bunch of metal tubes, but I would strongly suggest going with the actual concealed box that has the filter in it. That is the best setup. I want a newer radiator because I don't know. I just don't like because it's old. Last time it overheated, so I rebuilt the engine. Okay, so if you rebuilt the engine and you reused the stock radiator, I hope you flushed it out. Usually when engines have issues, they will do that. Most radiators, unless they're leaking, the radiator isn't bad. The thing I would tell you, though, is to wash that radiator out. Make sure there's no dirt and debris in that radiator because that could cause an overheating issue. So that, I would definitely get your garden hose out today. Wash that radiator out and get fluid to flow through. Because if air can't flow through there, it's going to overheat. One way to check that is use a light. Put a light behind the radiator, look from the opposite side. If you can't see that light, it can't get air through. It's the same trick that we use on air filters. If we want to see if an air filter is bad, we put a light in it and we look at the filter from the other side and see if we can see light. If we can't see light, air can't come through. So that's a little trick. I've shown it here in a few other videos. Like I said, if you get a chance later on, go ahead and hit that up. I'm going to go ahead and activate you as a mod too. You've been pretty good in this chat. So there you go. You've been added as a mod, man. Now, if you got any questions, like I said, I always try to mod people up when they add good content and they got good questions. You know, you being a motorcycle mechanic, you're going to have some mechanical knowledge and might be useful to people later on. So definitely. So Cal, remember that flushing that radiator, you will leave a mess in your driveway, so be prepared to clean that up. Yes, especially if you live anywhere where there's dirt, dust, debris, a lot of leaves. Yeah, that stuff decomposes over time and it leaves a heck of a mess behind when you wash that radiator out. If you're having overheating issues or you're concerned about it, I would definitely wash the radiator out first. Again, you can upgrade to an all one-piece aluminum radiator. You could buy online. There's tons of sources for those kind of cars where you can buy a nice upgraded aluminum radiator. I would go that route rather than replacing it with a stock. If you're in there and doing the repairs, why do we go with stock parts? It's pointless. If you're there and you're doing work, why not upgrade it to the best possible option that you can get? That's why I also do some of the stuff on the channel is I try to do things that upgrade performance when we're in there doing things. If I have the option to put a bigger alternator on the car over the stock option alternator and it's the exact same bolt-in, I will go that route because later on I might need the extra voltage. Let's say I'm going to be jumping other people's cars that go dead in a parking lot. I want to have a good alternator so that my alternator doesn't get destroyed or wreck my battery when I'm jump starting another car. So again, take those times when you have them, upgrade those parts. They do make a huge, huge difference. From Lorenzo, my new mod. Yeah, thank you. I'm ordering it now. It's Skunk Radiator. Good. Yes, Skunk is a good brand. Make sure it's a direct fit, though. Make sure it isn't one of their universals. They do sell universals, and that is a problem. So Cal, make sure if it's replacing that the thickness is compatible with your fan. Some aftermarket radiators are a little thicker and the hat and will hit the fan. Yes, make sure it's a stock dimension radiator. Make sure it's completely factory specification radiator. A lot of times you can get the aluminum core radiators that don't add a whole lot to them. They just have the aluminum tanks on the side. That is a nice upgrade to have because those plastic tanks over time crack. They also will tend to leak. So that's a nice upgrade to put in there. Try to stick to factory core dimensions. Make sure it is a bolt-in one. Make sure it's not a universal radiator. If it's universal, don't buy it. Lorenzo, so I need another fan. I would go high-speed fan or not. The fan, you want to see what the CFMs are on it. You need to match the CFMs based on whatever your current fan setup has. If I remember right, I think the Hondas had a fan that just kind of bolted down over it. I don't know if yours has a dual fan or a single fan, though. That's what you're going to have to check. Also, the shrouds. Another issue is the fan shrouds. Some of them will have a fan shroud that sits over it. And that's what holds the radiator into place. You need to make sure that the radiator dimension size is exactly the same. So don't buy something that's oversized that won't fit the car. SoCal, if you're pulling and replacing the radiator, you might as well replace the fan as well. You might have easy access to it. Mine's a single fan, says Lorenz. Yes, so yeah, you could probably go ahead and replace that with a new fan. The reason that we are saying replace the fan is because you're at a position where that vehicle is now old enough, where that fan has probably taken enough abuse, where the windings inside the motors are probably getting weak, meaning that that could be leading to some overheating issues as well. So it doesn't hurt to throw in a stock replacement electric fan if that's what it has. Again, try to stick to the stock setups, just put better upgraded quality parts in it. So like an all one-piece aluminum radiator, that's an exact dimension fit. Go with the stock electric fan, that's a bolt-in and a plug-and-play fan. You can find the plug-and-play fans. Otherwise, buy just the stock setup for the fan. That way you don't mess with losing that CFM. You can easily buy an online fan and have it be the wrong one and have it have massive issues. The reason why is a lot of those online fans don't meet or match a very specific CFM. And if it doesn't flow enough air through there, it won't cool the car down properly. Kevin, thanks for letting me hang out in the garage for a while, but I'm going to go. Thank you, Kevin, for being here. Again, we do this every Sunday at 1 a.m. Guys, make sure you guys hit the subscribe button, the like button, ring the notification bell so you guys notify when I go live. I'm always live every Sunday, 1 a.m. here on YouTube, and that is Central Time. I know SoCal called me out on it when he was first coming to the channel and stuff. He's like, what time zone are you in? And I'm like, I'm in Central Time. So, yeah. But yeah, it's good to see the chats growing. Yep, 1 p.m. Central Time. Yep. From SoCal there. So yeah, that's we go live here. I always like having my mods in to help monitor chats and stuff as I do projects. I missed you guys in the beginning. I didn't have you guys here, and I had to strike down somebody on the channel before you guys came in. I needed to kind of take care of that. Oh, I said 1 a.m. Sorry about that, man. Yeah, no, I'm not going at 1 a.m. Sorry, 1 p.m. 1 p.m. Central Time. SoCal, you missed it, so I'm going to bring you back around here. I want to show you what happened. This happened yesterday. And got a little too close to the white line on a back country road, and it decided to take my mirror off, wrecked the trim, bent the door, and like I've been telling everyone, we're going to go through and we're going to reverse a lot of this damage. Now, I'm not going to fix the dents, but I am going to touch up all the scratches. I'm going to replace the molding, and I'm going to put a new mirror on it. My mirrors are painted. So I'm going to use a trick that I'm sure SoCal knows all about. I'm going to put a used mirror on it that's already pre-painted. Lorenz, I'm replacing the outer and inner CV joint spring and shocks because I don't want any hassle when I am driving. Yeah, shocks and struts are always a good thing to replace. Make sure that you get good quality shocks and struts. Those help out a lot when it comes to performance. You can even buy some upgraded kits that you can lower the car down. Why would you want to lower a car? Okay, number one, people will lower cars for aesthetic reasons, to look cool. Next, they're going to lower a car for fuel mileage. Why are they gaining fuel mileage? Because they're removing the airflow from out from underneath the car. Underneath your car has a lot of things that air gets hooked on and can pull that car back. In order to fix that, they lower the car, they remove that air out from underneath the car. Again, most people do it for looks. Some people will do it for fuel mileage. Lorenz, does subframe on a Civic helps or just for looks? Are you talking about like subframe connectors? Please clarify that one. If you're talking about subframe connectors, what those do is they add strength to the chassis. So usually unibody cars are extremely weak, meaning that if you get into an accident, they're designed to crumple and fold and buckle in on themselves. Subframe connectors will strengthen the frame. You could usually put subframe connectors. What they do is your back half has like a half frame, your front half has another half frame, and subframe connectors put a bar in between and connect those. So that way all your support's not in the middle of your floorboards. It takes that pressure off of the floorboards and puts it into that subframe. SoCal, did that on my F-150. Not paying attention forces you to pay for repairs. Yes. I was paying attention. I will tell you that right now, SoCal. I was paying attention, but I did get a little too close to the white line. Their mailbox stuck out. Clocked that mailbox. I'm glad it didn't hit earlier on the fender or later on the back part of the car. I'm glad it only hit the mirror. I'm a little disappointed that it did damage to the door, though. Again, I don't have a good PDR guy here yet. Hopefully, I'll find one in the next couple of weeks. Maybe we can do some PDR on that and make it look really nice. Almost completely erase the damage, but for now, the molding and the mirror are the big things. So I will be bringing those once they come in. I've already ordered parts. I did that first thing yesterday when I got back from the damage. Subframe connectors, thank you. Yeah, subframe connectors, again, those are nothing to do with performance or power or anything. If you start pushing a lot of power to a car, you may add subframe connectors to strengthen the chassis because you've got so much torque going into it that you need to do something to stiffen up the frame. Most part is they're just designed for kind of protecting the driver. It connects the back frame to the front frame is what it does. Usually people will go for a full frame vehicle such as a pickup if they feel that way or they don't like the option of being in a unibody car. But even nowadays, even trucks are starting to go unibody, and I think that's disgusting because unibody is not designed for towing of any kind of weight or anything like that. I know people are putting Ford Mavericks and towing boats with them, and my attitude is you guys are messing up. You want to do that by a half-ton truck and just stay away from the unibody trucks. But some people live in a city where they don't do much towing. They basically use their truck kind of like a car, but they do haul a few bigger things every once in a while, like a TV or a chair or something like that, and they need something bigger than a car, so they'll buy a Ford Maverick. Vehicles have different uses for different people, and that's I try to give knowledge on everything. I try to tell people don't buy something that doesn't fit what you're going to put it through. You don't buy a car if you're going to haul a trailer every day. Lorenz, I am rebuilding my car for about a year now. I bought it only drive it 5 times. That is a project car, my friend. That's what that is. That's a project car. That is not an actual daily driver car. That's a project car. So yeah, if you got a project car and you're looking at doing stuff to it, don't be afraid of putting in performance parts and upgrades. Make sure you find stuff that fits your car. A lot of online places are going to choose to sell you parts that don't fit. Universal fit. Don't ever buy anything universal. This tailpipe or this chrome tip, that's a universal fit. That's not a factory fit. That's why we had to modify it. And that's what this whole video was about, was modifying stuff because we're buying online parts because we can't find what we want, so we have to modify. It becomes a slippery slope. So SoCal, subframe connector has its uses, but useless. So you're planning on adding tons of horsepower. It's not really worth the time or the money to do so. I would, for the most part, I would agree with that, with what SoCal said. Subframe connectors, yeah, if you're not adding a bunch of horsepower, such as a turbo or a supercharger, or really playing around with the car and boosting it up, there's no point in adding a subframe connector. If your car's that rusty where you have to add a subframe connector, probably should get a new car. That would be my bet, not to throw subframe connectors in a rusty car. Yeah, for the most part, I would agree with SoCal. It's one of those things that if you're going to add a bunch of power and you're going to do a bunch of stuff, and if you were going to actually take it to a track and you're going to put it on a road course, you would definitely do a subframe connector on a setup like that, because you're going to be doing a different suspension setup and you want the car to be stiff. You don't want the car to be loose and fluid, because you could go into a corner, catch that corner wrong, and because the car is too fluid, cause you to lose control. Subframe connectors help stiffen up the frame. You'll not notice it under most conditions unless you're pushing the car almost to its breaking point. Then you're going to notice the subframe connectors and how stiff the frame is. That's the only real time you notice a subframe connector. For the most part, yeah, and the bolt-on kits are not the best. You have to do a weld-in subframe connector if you really want it to hold tight. Don't be doing the other style. Make sure that they are the bolt-in. Sorry, not the bolt-in. Make sure they're the weld-in. The bolt-ins have flex to them. Thank you. I don't want tons of horsepower, only a little bit. Yeah, so just little modifications here and there. Yeah. The subframe connector for you, more than likely, as long as the car is good and you're not going to take it to a track, don't waste your time with subframes. If you're going to do a subframe, I would weld them in. Don't bolt them in. Bolting is a cheap way. We used to do that on Mustangs. We used to just bolt subframe connectors and then we'd run them so tight that we would see it crush the metal. So we used to do that on Mustangs all the time. That's why I changed my engine, because the PH16 engine here, I think it's about 100 horsepower, more or less. D16 makes it around 130, if I'm correct. If I'm correct, or if I'm not correct, let me know. Horsepower range varies based on what's in the engine, and some of that has to do with the computer. So your computer will only go so far. If you have the computer out of a D16 engine, then you can unlock the potential that it has. If you're still using that stock computer from the PH16, you're not going to unlock that power, because it's not increasing the fuel, because it's not increasing what it needs to gain that horsepower. That's something that you'll have to look into. That requires a lot of investigation. I would agree, no need for subframe connectors unless you are building a race car. Correct. Lorenz, also VTEC. Okay, so we're dealing with a VTEC. And I changed my ECU to, okay, so you did change the ECU. That's good. Because local release car here is, some places are very restrictive when they release cars into the market. They will only come with so much horsepower. Your basic daily drivers are very stripped down and gutted. This thing was extremely gutted until I started pulling some things out of it. Thank you. I will keep that in mind. Yes. Again, even if you change that ECM, there are some tuning stuff you're going to need to pay attention to. Just because you put the bigger, better engine in it doesn't mean you unlock that performance and power. You still might have holdups in the computer. If you know any good tuners that you can take your car to, I would not hesitate. And once you got it running and it's in good shape and everything's running solid on it, take it to a dyno shop. Put it on the dyno, do a couple pulls and find out where you're at. They will also be able to judge what is coming out of your exhaust by using basically a form of an O2 sensor. And that'll tell you if you're running rich or you're running lean. If you're running lean, they can add more fuel through the computer to increase that fuel mileage. Now your injectors will only go so far. So at some point you might be doing an injector change. Again, if you just did the whole motor drop in and you use the injectors off of the D16, you probably already have bigger injectors than what the computer is already reading. So you have some room to be able to bump the computer up to match. but you need to get everything in sync. It doesn't ever run right if it's not all linked together. The computer, the injectors, and the engine all have to work together as a unit in order for them to be at their best. SoCal, just remember, cars built in the way that everyone from Parnelli Jones to Grandpa Jones can get in and handle the car safely. Correct. Don't ever build a car that is out of your skill level. Lorenz, that's what's keeping me here, because I'm in my province. We don't have a dyno or a tuner. We need to transport to another place to tune. Yeah, if you don't have a way to tune, you're not going to be able to get those to match up. How difficult is it for you to get to a tuner? Is it something you could plan out and do? Because once you get everything straightened out, you really should, with that much that you've done to that car, you really should hit up a tuner, somebody who can actually tune the car, meaning you need to do your homework on them. Make sure that they know what they're doing and that they can tune your car. Because you've done so much playing around in that car that you need to figure out where everything's at. Okay, so let's get into the wiring issues here. We've gotten into chat. So I talked about vehicles that have wiring issues for some LED lighting that we do. Where can we run into some of those wiring issues? Well, we can run into them in the headlights. We can run into them in interior lights. This vehicle is a prime example. I will be doing a video later on, not today, because we're already getting near the end of our time, but getting to the point of some LED lights don't work in the interior because they run on a certain voltage. Well, LEDs may only respond at a certain voltage, where incandescents will work, they just won't be as bright. I did notice that the dome light in this one was extremely dim, but I did upgrade this one to an LED. And let's go ahead and take a look at the issue that I have in that. So as frustrating as this might be, this is something I might be chasing down here on the Silver Swan. So one thing that I have going on, as you guys can see, no dome light. Check this out though. Dome light. I have to put the key in the ignition in order to have that. So that is a massive frustration. And these are some of the mods that we run into and some of the modifications that we do. That's a hassle. The other thing is this truck, if I put LEDs up there, it doesn't allow my turn signals or brakes to work properly. Again, same if I put LEDs back here. The reason why is because the manufacturer designed this to run on incandescents, meaning that you need to have the proper voltage going to the incandescent in order for it to work. In order to fix that, you will need to add resistors. These resistors can be found online, and they're usually the little gold ones that you can find online. But I don't like using those because they're not always the best. Those resistors get really hot and sometimes they can have massive issues. So again, these are modifications that we got to do when we buy parts online. Now, luckily, I got by with putting LEDs in my side marker lights and in my headlights. I was able to go with LEDs in there, and I did, and I liked the way they look. I did do a lot of upgrade LED stuff on Malibu steel, actually a ton of LED, and I haven't ran into a whole lot of issues, but there was something that I avoided doing LEDs on: the brake light and turn signal lights. I avoided them on GM because GMs have a setup to them that if they don't have an incandescent in there, they will blink fast. That is an extremely annoying feature, but it lets you know when you have a light out. But at the same time, when you put an LED in, it thinks that there's a light out, even though it isn't. But I did do my reverse lights. I'm trying to remember if I already got to, no, I did not get to my turn signal lights on the side. These side marker lights I may upgrade at some point. I believe I already did the front setup. So the front is all done, but I don't have anything done on the back corners. But I did do my reverse lights, my license plate lights, interior lights. Those were all done. So those are all set up. LED lights are a nice modification to do because it does help at night. If you drive anytime at night, it really does. It helps to be able to see. So good modification. Other modifications might include stereo systems. Those take up space. Sometimes just upgrading stock speakers into a more performance, like 3-phase or 4-phase or 4-way speaker. Those are sometimes the better way to go as far as speaker systems go. You can upgrade your sound system quite extensively. Newer cars are becoming extremely hard. This is why the person who brought up the 2024, you can't do a whole lot with that car. You can't. You drive it for fuel mileage. That's about all you're going to get out of it. That's where it is. So again, these are all things we do when we modify cars. We try to do performance things. We try to make them work good. We try to make them run better. That's the point and the whole idea behind it. Lorenz, hopefully we answered a lot of your questions today because you are tiptoeing in a dangerous position. You've already done a lot of upgrades, but you need to get everything tuned and running together properly in order to make sure that your next moves will be working on it and making it run. In order to get all of those to work together, it all has to be tuned together. So at some point, I would find somebody to reach out and help you with that tuning, because that's a huge thing. Huge. Tuning is very vital. Anytime somebody comes to me with anything performance related and they tell me they haven't been to a dyno shop and they've done a bunch of work, I tell them, you need to make an appointment with the dyno shop. You need to know where it's at. You need to know how much fuel it's getting, if it's getting enough, if it's not. If it's not getting enough, you got to figure something out. So let's go ahead and tiptoe into the news, guys. News has been pretty quiet this week. I haven't done a whole lot to check up on news lately. I've been really trying to focus more on doing the chat stuff with you guys, being here with you guys when I do projects and look at stuff, show you guys what's been going on in the garage and what we got coming up. So that being said, what do we got coming up? Well, I'm still having brake issues on this car. This car has been a massive brake issue problem. So we're going to take the next step in fixing our brakes, and we're going to be putting in brake calipers next week. So we're going to be taking the brakes back apart, but I'm going to go one step farther, guys. I'm going to actually paint my calipers so that my calipers don't have bare metal on them. Why would I want this? Because I don't want them to rust. You know, it's not like I'm going to drive this in the snow and the cold and the ice and everything else, but I don't want water getting on them and rusting the calipers or causing problems later on in the future. So our next week's topic is going to be on painting parts and what we need to do. And we don't need to get super carried away with this. Some people get way in the weeds on this and they try to do fancy coatings. They try to do ceramic coatings or powder coatings or something like that. You don't need to get super carried away. Sometimes just a little bit of paint and even a rattle can paint goes a long ways. So next week's topic will be on that. Following that, we may have, depending on the mirror coming in and the molding, we may be going that direction. We may be doing the spoiler on this car. We may be doing some LED stuff on the Silver Swan. I want to finish the LED in the interior, guys. Before this truck gets parked away for the wintertime, I want to get all my LEDs in my interior done. I want to get the truck pretty much ready for storage. The only thing really left on the Silver Swine after this is going to be rims and tires, and maybe a tonneau cover, or possibly some upgraded leather heated seats. That's a huge expensive cost on my end, so that's going to be much later on when I add the leather seats in it. But I am looking at some other things to kind of dress up this interior. I did want to go with a two-tone leather seat interior package, and if I go with who I want to go with, I will drop all their info when I do it. But that's kind of my goal, is to kind of go that route, add those into this truck, because I think it'll really add some value to this truck if I do that. I am looking at doing the heated and cooled leather seats, because I do think it would be an awesome upgrade. That would really kind of add to this old truck and kind of give it a new flair. So I am looking forward to that setup. The other thing is that we got to kind of see how the rest of the year plays out. We've got quite a bit going on. I do have some videos coming up for road tripping, guys. So just know there's a lot in the works that I'm trying to bring you guys all the details. And as we slowly develop things, we'll work on it. The only thing that's going to throw things in a wrench is going to be that mirror. As soon as I get that mirror in, I do want to get it on the car. So that might fluctuate all my content back a week or two if that happens. So guys, thank you for all your support. It's been awesome. This live has had quite a bit of interaction. We got ourselves a new mod to the channel, so that's awesome. Guys, check me out every Sunday at 1 p.m. Central Time. You guys can check out what we do here and just kind of chill and enjoy and have some good chat conversation like we did this time. I want to say thank you guys for all the support. Continue hitting the like, the follow, and the subscribe buttons, and I'll see you guys on the next one.